today. When we start this program, sit back and enjoy about an hour and change of commentary and perspective on the city of Charlottesville, a jurisdiction that the five of us, Judah, our director, is five, love dearly. We're going to highlight budget season. We'll highlight moving forward out of this pandemic. We will highlight the things that need to be discussed here that you read about often in the news, including housing affordability. Right, Keith Smith?
Thank you, sir.
Housing affordability.
Well, that's I'm trying to change that narrative from affordable housing to housing affordability. I think that just kind of describes it a little bit better.
So guys, give the show a like and a share anywhere you are watching. We are live on every social media platform known to mankind. Judah Wickower is our fantastic director. We can take your comments, your questions, and your perspective as long as they're respectful. We don't mind being challenged, but it's got to be mindful of the golden rule. Judah, we can rock and roll when you're ready. Sir. Guys, good Friday morning. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith here on the I Love Seville Network. Thank you kindly for joining us. We have a large audience as the network continues to grow. Charlottesville, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. Today, we're presented by Yes Realty Partners and Keller Williams Alliance. We're powered by Segura Solar, and we'd like to welcome Fincham and Associates, Stanley Martin, American Pest, Interstate Service Company, and just a fantastic group of partners like Charlottesville Settlement Company, Allied Property Management, Pearl Certification, and the Free Enterprise Forum for making this program possible. This show is dynamic. You, the viewer and listener, can participate in the discussion by offering your thoughts, your comments, and your questions in the comment section across all our social media channels and platforms. Judah Wickower is our fabulous director. 10 plus years of working alongside each other here at V&V Brands and I Love Seville. Judah, if you could go to the studio camera first, and we will welcome three gentlemen to the program that are friends and positive stakeholders in this community, all around good guys. I see two of them quite often. Juan Diego Wade, I wish I saw you even more because you're just an all-around A-plus person.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Smith, great panel today.
Great panel, and for the two or three people that may not know our two guests today, we're going to start off with having Juan Diego introduce himself, tell him a little bit about himself, and then we'll move over to Lloyd.
Thank you very much. My name is Juan Diego Ricardo Wade. I born in Richmond, Norfolk State University, came here as a student in UVA to get my master's in urban planning, and one of those folks that got here and couldn't leave. I found my wife, and we have been married for nearly 30 years. We have a daughter, who's a sophomore in college, and we have decided to make this our home and to make a difference here in this community that we love, that have nurtured us, that have helped raise our daughter, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I told someone yesterday, I'm still riding high from last weekend, the great Tom Tom Festival and Fridays After 5. Man, I was on a downtown mall, and I just saw so much love, so much diversity. Also, part of it was going ching ching because it was
meals tax.
But that's aside.
Well, I was helping with the ching ching with a couple of cocktails.
It was just.
I think we have a sound effect for Vice Mayor Wade.
Yeah.
There it is for there. Vice Mayor Wade.
Look at you, huh?
It was what Charlottesville was. What drew us to Charlottesville, just so much, and so it was just nice, and it was good to be part of that. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to have this dialogue with guys sitting around with drinking coffee.
Is that what this is? Coffee? Just checking.
Yeah, okay.
Checking.
Coffee with the stakeholders.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in a little bit later because we have a little bit of a mutual connection. But
Yes.
But Lloyd, please introduce yourself to the two people
Well, I am now
who do not know you. I should add that as a second.
Lloyd Snook, longtime resident of Charlottesville. We moved down here in 1961 when my father was brought down to be a professor at what was then simply the Graduate School of Business, now the Darden School. Went to Venable and Walker and Lane High School, graduated in 1970. College, law school, got married the day after graduated from law school, and my wife Sheila Hoy and I came down to Charlottesville. We've got a law firm here in the same building with Jerry, and been practicing law together for 32 years, 33 years by now. So it's I was elected to council 2.5 years ago, and chosen as mayor about 3 months ago, and so here I am.
And the gray isn't getting that much worse.
Well, the good thing
You look
about,
good, Mayor Snook.
Hey, the
I was
good
just
thing,
thinking, man,
The
you
good
look
thing
great.
about being blonde is you can't tell what's gray and what's
Yeah.
what's
Amen.
blonde.
Amen.
Every time I see Mayor Snook, he is always has a smile on his face, and he always has a zest for life. You may never know that it may be, I don't know, stress is the right word, or chaotic. You're like the swan on the pond.
Well-
Everything above water just looks ready to go.
And then below is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try not to let the stress get to me. I'd said, sometimes people say, I don't feel stress, but I'm a carrier of it. So
I know the feeling. Well, welcome John Blair to the program. Keith Smith, where would you like to begin, my friend?
I just wanted to just figure out who's married a little bit longer. How many years you been married?
42.
You win. You
I'll be
win.
43 in about 2 weeks.
Really? When?
May 13th.
I'm May 26. I'll be only 36 years married. But
Youngster.
Youngster. Yeah.
How about Vice Mayor Wade? How many years did you say?
29.
29, soon to be 30.
Yes.
Good
yes,
for you.
In June. Yeah.
That's a
That's a milestone.
That's a big accomplishment in today's world to be the. But did I hear correctly? You and your wife work together?
Yes.
So do mine.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about that dynamic at some
Well,
point.
it's really very simple. I'm in charge of making sure that we have money that goes home.
Uh-huh.
She's in charge of spending it at home.
Oh.
And so I mean, she writes the checks.
Sounds like my
But
relationship
but your
with
wife's
my
also
wife.
a lawyer.
Sorry, she's also a lawyer. And we also don't, although we practice together in the sense that we're in the same office, I don't work on her cases, she doesn't work on my cases. We can trade ideas back and forth, but we don't work together.
And I see them often. Their paths during the day, because I'm watching you guys here and over here, your paths during the day don't cross that often.
No.
You know? So they're not, it's kind of like you and Yona.
That's what I have to say. It's
Yeah.
like Yona and I,
Yeah.
right? We work together, been married for 36 years. We work together every day for 36 years. But much like yourself, I do my thing, she does her thing. And sometimes we'll always start off, I don't know if you guys do this, but we're early risers. I think you tend to work late.
Yeah.
If I remember
Oh, he's a night
seeing
owl.
some posts. But we'll get together at 5:30 in the morning and get our day together and so forth and so on.
We occasionally make a concerted effort to go have lunch together, but most of the time, most days, we're going different directions too many times.
Well, that takes not only to be married as many years as you have been, but to work together, and I know this personally, that takes a little extra special couple to
We
make.
get along pretty well.
They as long as you do everything she tells you to do, right? At least in my world, that's what it is. So one thing, what does I don't think I've ever asked you what your better half does.
My wife, Claudette Grant, she does outreach for UVA Cancer Center.
Oh wow.
And so she loves doing that, working with the community to let them know about research, let them know about the different services, and really works well because if you think I'm popular and know a lot of people in the community, she has a lot of connections and relationships as well.
Well, I've heard of something about a power couple, but we'll leave that one. We'll leave And then we have a common connection of my brother-in-law. He's a close friend of yours, James Watson.
Yeah, James, I see that he's traveling overseas now.
He's in Germany right now.
Yeah,
Nuremberg, right?
Back home where he was born.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah, I know. We all know where everybody is right now. I also knew that James was in Germany because of that post right there. We love you, James Watson, if you watch that program.
What I was hoping to do today was kind of pick up, we've got the budget approved, right? And we can talk a little bit about that process, but let's talk a little bit what's going forward, right? What's vision there? What's going forward for the rest of 2022? What are you guys seeing for 2023? And I really want to go back to this door and this TomTom and kind of get what you guys thought, if that was a success or not, and can we kind of reproduce it from an income perspective?
Yeah.
So whoever wants to jump in first.
So, Lord, I'll just kind of chime in first. Is that for me, it was a whirlwind, and there should be something about said about just being new on council, the school board. You start in January, and that's usually when they're right in the mix of the budget. And so, at least I can speak for myself, but I think Brian feels the same way. It's like, man, we were just kind of getting our feet under us, and man, this budget season. I mean, if you'd asked me a month ago, I'm not sure if we would how the compromise was going to come about with the budget, because we had a lot of pulling interest of us, but we worked together and we compromised as a council, as a community, to get that budget adopted, and everyone feels good. We got a wave of emails of people thanking us for compromising and coming up with a budget, and they said we listened to them, and so that was very reassuring and comforting to hear. And I think moving forward, now that the budget is settled, we have some key hirings to do, including the city manager. We need to decide what we're going to do about that. The police chief. We have several HR and IT and a lot of other positions that we need to hire. And I think now that we can kind of focus on that, we have a dynamite staff, I believe, with the city manager. He's interim, but with the two assistant city managers, they're just doing a fantastic job with that. So we have our plate full for us for the next, I was going to say this year, but probably next year and the year after that. So many things had been put on pause because of the pandemic, and things were going on the council and staff that we just didn't have the capacity to do. And now I think that we're ready to work on some of those items and kind of tick them off as we go.
I'd like to take a deeper dive into those items, but Lloyd, have we turned the corner? Have we, as a council, have we turned the corner and we're starting to work as a team?
Absolutely. And I'll say the thing that I most value about the current council is that we're able to talk to one another. We're able to talk to one another off camera, so to speak. We're able to, and that, not that we get all the city's business done off camera, but when we walk into a meeting, or Zoom into a meeting. We've now walked into actually one meeting so far. But when we go into a meeting, I've already talked with the other counselors. I know what the issues are that are important to them. I know where the areas of disagreement are. For example, we have a 225-page budget document. We don't have to talk about all 225 pages of that. We know, because we've talked about it ahead of time, that there are perhaps 8 or 10 issues that are important. Or when we had the final meeting, we went through the city staff, in part because we had all these discussions. We knew that we had the spreadsheet of, okay, tell us what do you feel about this, and this? What amount of money is attached to that? Where does that balance out? And we could come up with a decision that evening that was well thought out, that reflected a consensus on every issue, and it was wonderful. But that would not have been possible if we hadn't already talked about the issues ahead of time, if we hadn't already had some sense of dealing with one another, that here were the things we needed to compromise over. And so that ability to talk to one another, I just can't emphasize how important that is.
As someone who watches those meetings,
thank
you. I'm very grateful for that, because the meetings are much more efficient and move more briskly, if you may.
Well, and again, because we've talked with one another, we don't have to explain ourselves to one another to the same extent or argue with one another to the same extent. And we already know, I mean, I know, for example, if we're going to be talking about what the real estate tax rate was, I've already made my point about that in prior meetings. I already know I'm going to lose 4-1, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with a big passionate discussion of the issue, and so we can move on.
So, just to play off of Juan Diego's comment, I've been around this world for 3.5 decades in different jurisdictions, not necessarily sitting on your side of the dais, though I tried. My Yankee accent would not allow it in the district I'm in, but we tried on it in 2009. But I tell folks who are running or get elected, it's a fire hose when you come on in.
Yeah.
And it's to Lloyd's point, this budget conversation really started months before the vote.
Yes.
Right? There's these work sessions. It takes a substantial amount of time. So talk a little bit, Juan Diego, about the time and the commitment and the meetings. Because what I don't want folks to think is well, we kind of cut a deal behind the things and walked in. There was a lot of work and stuff brought up into that point.
Yeah, we have several work sessions, and they usually focus on a particular thing, whether it's CRP or nonprofits, and so we do that. And for me, maybe it'll die down some. It's 22 hours a week for me right now, dealing with council, with the reading, the meetings, and so it is a commitment.
Excuse me, does that include like this time, right? That's just actual work.
Yeah, it's including if I'm meeting with community members. For me, it's all part of being on the council. And
that's impressive. You got it to 22?
Yeah. I mean,
22 hours a week.
Yes.
I have to tell you, that's pretty efficient.
That's well done.
Well, and to me, hopefully it'll slow down some now that we adopted the budget, and that and it was similar to me when I first got on the school board. I felt like I didn't know a lot, so I had to do a lot more reading and things. But as I got more familiar with the school board, I didn't have to spend as much time doing the background, and hopefully that will be the same for council.
I counsel folks who are going to go on elected officials or go for that. You're looking for between 20 and 40 hours a week. I don't know how much time you, as chairman, as mayor.
I would love to know that.
You probably spend a little bit more time than that.
I joke that I spend 40 hours a week practicing law, 40 hours a week being mayor, 40 hours a week sleeping, 40 hours a week trying to remember who my wife is, and that leaves me 8 hours for carousing.
Yeah.
So I am a Marine, so I was having a hard time following that math.
Don't have enough fingers.
I'm going to take the shoes off and start using toes.
But, there are a couple things going on here. One is, as mayor, it was very easy when I was on council, knowing that if I didn't want to say something about an issue, I didn't have to. I didn't have to really get into the nitty-gritty of things. As mayor, I know that I'm going to be in a position where I might have to. I try to resist the temptation, but I might have to. And so I go into the meeting trying to know as much about every page of the 200-page packet that we get. And I will spend typically Sunday night until way late trying to, because I hate, this is the same as a lawyer, I hate going into something unprepared.
Sure.
And so I will try very hard to be fully prepared. The other piece, I figured out at one point that in the 6 weeks before we adopted the budget, from about March 1st on, I had 91 hours during that 6 weeks of meetings.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Not talking about preparation time, and they weren't all on the budget, but they were things like, some of the other organizations that I'm on, the Regional Transit Authority, Regional Transit Partnership, Regional Housing Partnership, and so on.
15 hours a week of budget meetings?
No, not of budget, but of council meetings.
Okay, okay.
And I'm hoping that that will slack off a bit. But one of the things that I think will happen now that the budget season is over is that we will begin to start working on some of the things that have been put off for a long time.
I think this is going to be somewhat complicated once in-persons really meetings start ramping up.
Right. I mean, the great thing about Zoom meetings was I could be on one Zoom meeting until 4 o'clock and then in 30 seconds be over to another Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, if we get into the real world, the meeting that was from 2 to 4 might have been at the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority,
exactly right.
and the meeting from 4 to 6 might be downtown Charlottesville, and I didn't have to go anywhere. I could just go click, click, and
Yeah.
change from one Zoom meeting to the next.
And you may or may not have pants on at the time.
I think he always had pants on. I always like seeing their backdrops.
Yeah.
His were often in his law office.
Yeah.
Their backdrop.
Yeah, I tried to make sure that I had pants. One of the things, there was a meeting back in July of 2020 when I was actually on vacation at the time. I was in a condo overlooking the golf course at Bryce Resort, and this meeting that started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon went till 2:30 in the morning.
Good Lord.
And finally, about 1 o'clock, my wife said, "I'm going to bed." And she came over, not thinking about the fact that I was on camera, and she came over and gave me a kiss on the top of my head. And
People love that stuff, though.
anyway.
It humanizes you.
Yeah, and it was a very human moment.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing happened. So we try to avoid that. And of course, there every now and then you get the problem of you forgot to mute or you unmuted accidentally. And anyway, but.
So Juan Diego, when do you think the city council will go back to in-person, a full in-person?
Well, of course, our last meeting
did
was hybrid, and you know what? I don't think we've talked about this as a council, kind of permanently, but I think that I like the hybrid because I think some people have gotten used to. I don't have to get a babysitter. I don't have to make other arrangements. I can, chime in when the time is that I've been allotted or doing certain things. They know that they've done it for the last 2 or 3 years, and they know that they're going to get an opportunity, and more importantly, that we hear them, and that and so we're going to the council. It wasn't heavy advertisement before, but we had 23 seats open. And maybe half of them were filled up, and so it may not always be that way, but I think people like, this way so far. But we haven't done a survey. That's just kind of my gut feeling on it. So
Well, the industry as a whole, businesses as a whole, are I think migrating towards this hybrid scenario. But the point that I was making is talking about the 22 hours, right?
Yeah.
You're still bouncing from Zoom to Zoom at this point. I think that number is going to climb a little bit once you start.
So a lot of that is certainly the meetings that I have with the different committees and things
Sure.
that I'm on. But a lot of my time now is meeting with constituents that have really kind of been on the sidelines for the last 2 or 3 years because of what has been happening in City Hall. And they're like, okay, I feel like I can now get re-engaged with City Hall and City Council. And we're meeting. We're having a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. What I'm doing now is that I'm having what I'm calling walk-in meetings. And so I have several meetings now that the weather is nice with residents and constituents that we're walking to great neighborhoods, and as I call it walk and talk. And so
Good for you.
and
It's like West Wing.
yes and so
Great show.
that's what we're doing now. That's part of those hours, and to me that's essential to being to being a counselor, is to letting the residents know that you're approachable, that they can reach out to you, and it's not just business owners or developers or whatever. And a lot of these meetings are with, just John Q. Public. And so, yes.
Good for you. Congratulations. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, and I say I'm also seeing a real increase in the number of of meetings or occasions to meet with constituents. Just in the last couple of days, I mean, tomorrow, for example, I've got 2 different gigs. One, Habitat for Humanity at Lachlan Hill, their official dedication. I'm also speaking to a bunch of Little Leaguers later on in the day. This week we had a meeting for the Friends of Downtown Charlottesville. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting yesterday for the Defense Affairs Committee. I mean, all these things that when we were closed up a year ago, we weren't doing.
Well, and also, to be a little direct and honest about it, you guys were a little busy with some internal issues, and it was hard to get out into the public and really have these one-on-one conversations. So I'm encouraged to hear that that's what you guys are doing on that end of it. I do want to go back to this Tom conversation a little bit. Jerry and I have been talking. Actually, it's been Jerry mostly talking about this DORA end of it. Do you see that growing some traction as far as look, we just adopted a budget. It's a little bit higher. The tax rate's a little higher. We're all business folks here, or at least most of us are.
We should give some background on this.
Yeah, so why don't you do that?
So DORA is an acronym for Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area. There's been some new policy, is that the right word, Mayor Snook? That's allowing jurisdictions to potentially utilize
at the state
DORAs.
level.
At the state level.
ABC.
Yeah. To utilize designated outdoor refreshment areas to drive tax revenue and community engagement. Danville is going to be the first one to do it, a year-round DORA that's permanent. We've had their ringleader, Lee Vogler, who's a city councilor, on this show to discuss that. And TomTom did a proof of performance this past weekend, and from all indication, it was very positive. Charlottesville Police Department, you guys were both quoted in an NBC 29 story, along with the Charlottesville Police Department. CPD indicated that there was no trouble associated with the DORA during TomTom. And both you guys in the NBC 29 article or story, and I want to commend you guys because you routinely are offering perspective to the media to kind of give us clarity in what you guys are thinking, which is appreciated. You guys both seem open-minded to the concept. Is that a good background right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
And let me say, when you first talked about this a year ago, there were a couple things going on. A reason why I was not a great fan. One was I didn't think we were in a position, given COVID, to start opening that up in the same way. And the second thing, and I just want to throw this out there, that one of my broader concerns has always been that in Charlottesville, I mean, in Virginia, we have this open container law that says you're not supposed to walk around in public on city streets carrying alcohol. And so I remember one judge, Judge Steve Helvin, saying when he was being asked to find somebody guilty of violation of the open container law, I said, how am I supposed to justify putting this person, giving this person a fine? It wasn't really a jailable offense, but giving this person a fine and prosecuting when we're doing that every week at Fridays after 5, we're doing it downtown. How do we justify this? And so I think there's a real concern that we make sure that our messages are not conflicting.
Sure.
And we figure out what exactly we want the message to be. If the message is going to be, it's fine in this limited area, that's fine. If we want the message to be, doesn't matter, whatever goes, goes, that's not the message we want. So the proposal and the plan that was implemented here, first of all, did not require any action from City Council. City Council did not weigh in on it at all. And it's fine with me that it was able to be done at an administrative level, and that's great. Frankly, it makes more sense for it to be done at an administrative level than for council to get involved with every step of the way.
Well, the process would just take forever to get
right, and there's no reason to be doing that. So my thought of it all, first of all, of course, this past weekend we had TomTom going on, we had the Dogwood Festival, we had Fridays After 5. It was a gorgeous night.
Beautiful weather.
You couldn't ask for a better night to do it. And I went downtown onto the mall about 5 o'clock, and it took me an hour to walk down and back.
Wasn't
Just
that
be-
awesome?
Well,
Yeah.
and that's also because the dude has high profile. He's a very recognizable guy. That was the reason why.
Yeah.
Well, but the point is, there were lots of folks down there who wanted to talk,
Yeah.
who wanted to. They were so glad to be out. It was, it had this, we're back, baby kind
Yeah.
of moment that was just so neat, and I love that, and I know that the economic activity and the people there, the energy was palpable. And I'm perfectly up for trying a few more times, and let's see how that works. And we may find that there are some specific policies and procedures that we want to apply. But let's try it a few more times, see how it goes.
I want to highlight this and then get out of your way. I was there 2 days. It was the most diverse that I have seen
Oh, yeah.
the downtown mall
Oh, yeah.
from a customer base standpoint
Oh, yeah.
in a very long time.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, likewise, and I think we just heard Lloyd said a new slogan for the city. We're back.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I kind of.
Well, that was funny.
Yeah. So likewise, I mean, as you're going down
There should be a quote here somewhere.
the mall, you just saw that just a whole spectrum of what this city, what this community has to offer, and that we can do this. And I agree with Lloyd is that we can try it a few more times. I want to see more about the social equity aspect of this, but I think that that's something that we can and we are addressing in this city. I think that, we can, last weekend prove ideally what it could be. And we got an email, city councilor, we got a wave of emails of support, but one in particular, and this is public information from the owner of Fitzroy.
Fitzroy.
And he's
Rich.
I forgot the name, but I'm pretty.
I think it's Rich, yeah.
He said that this was the most successful weekend ever, not just pre or post pandemic, but ever. And that so he was just lauding how successful it was, and I think that was one of the areas where I saw a long line of people.
So I can speak to that because I was on that line, but to Lloyd's point and to everybody's point here, we're all personable folks. We all love to talk to people, right? This is what we do. It was great. We met people from all over the area, local folks, and we had a chat. My wife and I had a chat for the half an hour, 45 minutes we were on the line. Did not realize that we were on the line that long.
Yeah.
And just had enough time. The good news is they didn't run out of gin, so that was the good news.
My favorite moment last week, I'm walking down the mall, and I walk past this woman, and I hear behind me, "Are you who I think you
Yeah, you
are?"
put that on Facebook.
That's right.
Yeah.
Are you who I think you are? And I asked my folks on Facebook, okay, what's the best answer that I could have given other than it depends who do you think I am?
Right.
That sort of deal. And I got some really great answers. My favorite answer came from Aaron Monahan, who said, "Why, yes, I am Sheila Hoy's husband." Thank you for asking.
That's perfect. Yeah.
But,
So much similar. I was at the UVA baseball game with my mother and father on Sunday, and the guy in front of me turns around and literally says, "I think I know you. Are you who I think you are?" And I went, "Dude, I don't know your money, man. I don't know your money." And you're thinking of somebody else. And then he starts going, and it was really interesting. And I'm super blessed to sit here and have this conversation with everybody on this end of it. But he goes, "Oh, I see with your family," and I go, "Yeah, we're trying to enjoy the game and all this stuff." Well, I know you're trying to do that, but how's the real estate market? And then my mother taps me and says, "You need to talk to him." "Yes, Mom."
Yeah.
and that's what I did.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw this to you guys. Do you see the Dora as something that would be spearheaded by the city or by a nonprofit in conjunction with the city? I mean, who would be the leader here? Is this where we're seeing potentially Friends of Seaville headed in this direction? I mean, ABC licenses could be correlated with nonprofits, as we know. How do you see this working out?
Yeah, so that's, I had that on my paper, like who would be responsible for this? And so I have a bigger vision of what the downtown mall could be, and that part of it could be the new Friends of Charlottesville, is that, we can have some enhanced programs and like cleaning up and things like that that we can do on the downtown mall in the corner and in other places like that. But who will be responsible for that? And I think it can be done. I don't want to get too bureaucratic about this, but we have to have these things in place so that just in case things happen, and have these procedures and things in place.
But you need to do that just for the flow of revenue, right? Right. Ultimately, the goal here is to be some incremental revenue for the city, right? I mean, we get tax base, meals tax, but we raised our taxes a little bit. We have to try to figure out how to get some of that money.
Yes, Keith, I agree with you. That is a big part of it, the financial part of it. But for me, it's just more so is that this should be an aspect of living in Charlottesville. That social aspect of it. Certainly, potentially we could benefit financially as a city. But if that's something that you value as a resident or part of Charlottesville or part of this community, then that is much more valuable to me as a counselor than the I don't know exactly the percentage of tax that we would get from that, but yes.
You're talking quality of life, and people don't know this. The downtown mall is a public park,
right?
So creating ways for the downtown mall to be even more communal from a public park standpoint is the essence of the mall.
And the downtown mall was a public park before we had a meals tax. The meals tax is not why we've got the downtown mall.
Well said.
When Ralph Sampson opened up his restaurant a few weeks ago, they invited me to come help cut the ribbon and say a few things. We had just, like the night before, passed the budget. And I said to everybody, okay, folks, we just passed the budget, and the meals tax is an important part of the budget. So, Ralph, I hope your business does real well.
Yeah.
It's located in Barracks Road, guys, Ralph Sampson Tap House. So, dot the I's and cross the T's on this before we go to the next topic. Where do we go from here on this?
One thing we need to talk about, if we're going to talk about the downtown mall, is that, and this is kind of bringing the real issue home that I think council needs to focus on. I am less concerned about who holds the license for an alcoholic function of some sort. I am much more concerned about the overall picture of the downtown mall, and an important part of that we have to talk about is homelessness. And that is a topic that we on council need to be focusing on. It has a lot of pieces to it. Almost all of them come back in some way to money. But we've got to figure out a plan for homelessness. And we're going to hear a report on Monday with the so-called PIT report, P-I-T, point in time report, of how many homeless folks we're dealing with. We know that the number of homeless people that we're dealing with at any point in time is about double what it was a few years ago. What are we doing about that? How are we going to solve that problem? Because if you talk to people who say, what's the downer on the downtown mall? It's the folks that they see who are homeless, who are, sort of camped out in the doorways and things like that. And that says to me, number one, we need to figure out a place to house them. Not simply because it's bad for business, which some people would say, but because as a human response, it's not acceptable that the only place somebody can sleep is on the bricks. And that's an issue that we've got to confront at the council level, and it's going to take some money to do it, and it's going to take some planning to do it, and we're going to get started on that on Monday night.
Good job.
Good for you.
To quote my dear friend Anthony.
How did I know you were going to say that?
Yeah, we've been spending
How did I
way
know you were
too
gonna
much
say
time
that?
together. To quote my dear friend Anthony Hara with TJAC, Thomas Jefferson Homeless Coalition, if I think I got that acronym.
Area
right.
Coalition.
Area Co. Thank you. I
Yeah.
missed the A on that end. And homelessness is easy to fix. Just put them in homes, right? Then they're not homeless anymore.
Right.
To put the folks in homes. Now, of course, that's oversimplifying it, but. Gentlemen, this is a real estate show, right? So,
Yeah.
So, on that topic,
And there's a lot of questions coming in too.
okay.
for
Well,
these
then
guys.
let's tackle the questions while I go ahead and double check my numbers here on that stuff.
Okay, so this is from Lee Elberson. He's the CEO of Claiborne. He's one of the board members of the Community Investment Collaborative.
Yes.
All around great guy, loves both you guys.
Yes.
He says, question for the council members. Have they done any contingency planning for a potential upcoming recession? Historically, we can expect a stagnation of the budget during a recession, at least from looking at the data presented here. And then he shares a link from the charlottesville.org website. This is from LinkedIn.
Charlottesville.gov.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Charlottesville.gov. So that's the question. I think we got just a little background that I'll get out of your way. Inflation's out of control. Supply chain issues continue to be a problem. Every client we have on our roster, just like you have clients, we have clients here, is complaining about labor shortages.
Mm-hmm.
Gasoline prices still haven't really gone down since they escalated. We obviously have this Ukrainian-Russian war that could be sending the entire globe into potential economic retraction. What is the contingency plan for a recession?
Well, the simplest answer is no, we haven't made a formal contingency plan. But what we do is continue to budget conservatively. For example, we reasonably anticipate that we reasonably anticipate that in December we will learn that we will have had a surplus of. We've budgeted for $12 million. It's probably going to be more like $14 million surplus. We haven't spent it all. We're adding to the contingency fund and the capital plan, in large part to make sure that we'll be able to build the new school, the new Buford. Best expectations are that next year we will have a similar increase in real estate assessments, partly because the city only reassesses half of the city each year.
Yeah.
And so we've got half of the city that didn't get the overall market reconsideration this past year that will get it this coming
And the
year.
first half will be left alone.
The first
right?
half will be left alone, and at this point, we haven't seen many signs that the real estate housing.
Oh, it's not
boom is-
slowing
We're
down.
going to talk about that in a few minutes.
So odds are pretty good, I think, that we will have adequate revenues certainly for the coming year. And the reality is that what we've seen in years past is that when the rest of the country is getting influenza, Charlottesville gets a mild cold. Because the University of Virginia
I'm going to
is
steal that from you.
Insulates us, yeah.
the University of Virginia is still the source of stability in this market. The second source of stability is the medical industry, and we're not getting any younger. So that's going to continue too. I'm not going to say we're recession-proof.
We're insulated.
But we're largely insulated. So
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it at that level.
The intensity of the recession, because Lee's right, it's coming.
Yeah.
Right.
And it'll affect certain industries
That's
much
exactly
more
right.
than it will affect the city.
Well, it will and it won't. It depends on will folks be able to pay their tax bills or not, right? You can have an assessment on it, but if all of a sudden, if there's a huge retraction in income, excuse me, in salaries, that could impact it, pardon me, on that end of it. But, does the city quarterly or every 6 months take a look at the budget, take a look how we're doing, right, versus revenue coming in like a normal business would do?
Yeah, we get, I'm finding this out already. We get kind of updates on where we stand with our budget, and so I assume that's going to continue happening throughout.
Well, in fact, one of the things that our interim city manager, Michael Rogers, has really taken to heart is the idea that we ought to be getting at least quarterly, if not more often, these kinds of reports. Now, the fact is that our expenditure side is pretty stable, but we're at least getting quarterly reports on tax revenues, as we did throughout the COVID experience, and that will continue. Now, I'll say one thing, and just to touch on something that's been kind of a complaint of mine for a long time. The city code provides that city council is supposed to have a finance committee. It's supposed to be 3 members. We've never had a finance committee, And I don't know that anybody in city government has ever been around when we've had a finance committee, though it's been in a code for 30, 40 years.
So does that committee consist of counselors or folks outside of that?
Well, there's a finance committee on which three members of council are supposed to sit. Now, we can't actually have three because it would then
Be a meeting.
It'd be a meeting. Maybe we could have two. But I do think that we need to institutionalize that kind of review by council.
For sure.
Fortunately, our staff, on our budget side, has been really good. I mean, the budget team and the revenue projection team, Todd Tivers and Jason Vandiver and Chrissy Hamill and the city manager's office and so on, they did an outstanding job during COVID in making sure that we were not surprised by the downturn in tax revenues of various sorts. I also have to say that Charlottesville, like virtually every other entity, every other government, was greatly protected by things like PPP for its, the loan practices for local businesses so that people could continue to pay their salaries, to keep people on staff. There was an awful lot of money that came from the federal government through PPP loans, through the ARP funds, through the CARES Act funds and things like that, that I don't see right now that it's reasonable to think we would get from the federal government, because I don't think they could agree on whether to tie their shoes at the moment.
That's why I use slip-ons.
Yeah.
So we have to be conscious of the fact that money source isn't going to be there next time we have a recession.
So the bottom line is, I think that the residents can rest assured that nothing is going to sneak up on us as far as we have our kind of the spider senses on with these type of things. Remember what happened 10, 12 years ago during the last kind of housing bubble burst.
Don't remind me.
Okay.
But city tax revenues during that bubble bursting actually held pretty constant.
It will, because there was actual sales happening and movement, and we have a spreadsheet in front of you, gentlemen. But just to go back to how you're going to see the increase in assessed values next year, if it tracks the market, we're about $43,000 positive. So homes that are selling year-to-date this year versus year-to-date last year, we're up around $43,000. So logically, next year you're going to have that continuing value increase. We talk about it on the show all the time, and maybe this is the right time to try to tackle some of this. It's getting kind of expensive to live here.
Yeah.
Understatement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
2011, last time that there was a 5+% 30-year mortgage rate, the median sales price, these are median numbers, was around $222,000 in $250,000 in 2011 versus the first quarter year to date of this time right now of 429, right? So that's almost double, right, in value in it. So
If I'm reading your chart correctly, this year is 472, right?
yeah, 472. I apologize. 472. Thank you for correcting.
But one thing that's important to know, and this is something that is in part driving these housing prices, is that Charlottesville is still cheaper than Northern Virginia. Charlottesville is still cheaper than Boston and New York. And so we're getting folks moving down here who think,
Zoomtown.
yeah, $500,000, no
Lloyd,
problem.
I hate to disagree with you. I'm in this world, and I'm starting to hear now, I didn't expect it to be that expensive.
But it's still lower.
It's
to his
lower.
point.
It's lower.
Still lower.
They thought they would have more cash to go. What I'm trying to get to is there some way we can help the folks that need it to stay here? Right, how can we improve our tax relief program, right, for folks? Right. A lot of folks don't understand what that is, and Juan Diego, I'll let you take it. It's a pretty narrow, limited who we serve on that.
It is, and we are trying. I think it's $250,000 or $350,000 $1,000 but we're trying, and is it
350.
350, and we're trying, and we don't have the ability to change that. We have to get legislation to do that
From the state.
From the state, and
Yeah.
we're trying to get that. And so there's so much that I felt we had a lot of conversations about this during the budget discussion, and we're doing everything that we possibly can to, including supporting programs like Habitat, the Housing Authority, and Habitat for Humanity, supporting our partner agencies that's out there, trying to address this issue as well.
But actually, we heard a report at the last meeting last week. I had asked a class at the law school to do a deep dive on all of the different kinds of tax relief options there might be. And they identified one that we're not using. They identified a mechanism that actually would be administered by the Social Services Board that does not have the kinds of restrictions that we have used in the past. And so one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks is to figure out if there's a way we can rejigger the plan that we've got so that it would not be hit by these same restrictions. And right now we've got restrictions that are based on three things.
Age.
One is the amount of your income.
Yep.
We end up including all the retirement income and Social Security income in that category.
And that number's really low.
The number's pretty low. And then the value of the house, if the value of the house exceeds $350,000.
And that's hurting people.
That's hurt. We had something, I don't know, Todd Divers figured out something, 150 people who had been getting tax relief last year who don't qualify for tax relief this year because
Their home values went up.
Their home values went up, say, to 420 or something like that, and all of a sudden they're over the limit. And the third thing was a net worth requirement, which turns out to be an incredible pain to administer.
Right.
And
But the
so
number's also low.
it's also low, that's right. And like $15,000, $25,000 or something, and that includes the value of your IRA.
Right.
That you're living off of. And so
Also disability in there, right? Isn't that one of them?
Disability and age were sort of the qualifiers.
Okay.
And so this new approach that we're going to be looking into is to see if we can figure out a way using this exception under the Social Services Board statute to allow us to have broader relief. But right now, Juan's absolutely right, that's not currently our law. I hope that before July 1, we will have a plan that will do that.
So I would, and Juan Diego, I'll just forget this out and I'll get out of your
Yeah.
way here. As one who's a practitioner, who's in the field every day, helping folks do this, my God, I hope we come up with a solution.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that this is another advantage of having a great institution like University of Virginia. Not only helps to insulate us from economic downturn, but they had the capacity to do this research. And right now, our staff is taxed, and they couldn't do that. And so that's just an aside of having the resources to be able to research that information.
We get into arguments all the time with the folks at UVA where they say, oh, no, we're not paying taxes on all this land, but think of all the great things we do for you otherwise.
That question's been coming in here.
And I acknowledge absolutely that they do a lot of great things for us. That doesn't mean you couldn't also help us out a little bit here,
So
but that's another story.
I chair the Regional Housing Partnership, and I've heard Lloyd ask UVA that very question. So the good news about that organization, to Juan Diego's point, is we're at the table. We have UVA at the table. And frankly, it's taken 2 years to get there, to be at the table, to talk about this. And I've never quite understood why the town and gown relationship never really was as strong as it should be, in my personal opinion. But the good news is they're at the table. We're having this particular conversation. I just, looking at your tax relief program, it is extremely antiquated.
Yep.
It is not keeping up with the reality out there, and it's leaving a ton of people behind that we should be able to help. And
that situation's going to get worse.
it's going to get worse, but to talk about the budget end of it, this really just becomes this triangle of the budget, right? So if there's more money over here, we have to determine what's important to us, right, on that end of it, and kind of balance this triangle so all sides are equal.
But the reality is we have not even been spending all of the money we've allocated for tax relief because we don't have enough people who qualify. And
Well,
so
it's
we've got to
also-
change the qualification requirements
Lloyd,
under this other
The
statute.
notification period is only a month, right? You have like, by the time you get your tax bill and have to go in, I believe it's March 1, something like that would be helpful, expanding the timeline that.
Well, I don't think a lot of people even know about it.
Well, that's why we're
driving
talking.
awareness for it.
That's why we're
is the
talking
first
about
step.
That's part of what was on my chat list and
Yeah.
we've been talking about this regularly.
I recall Councilor Cena McGill asking about that, the notification of it, and that is something that we need to do a better job of, and staff said that there is a way that they could identify those residents that qualify for it to let them know about this program. But it can be expanded. That's something that
It
was
has to be filed by March 1 annually. So when does
There
your
have already
assessment?
been proposals that Todd Divers is working on trying to streamline the process, because we've actually had 2 or 3 different programs, and we want at least 2 of them for property owners that he wanted to try to merge, but the different rules were getting in the way. I'm hopeful that one of the things we can do, if we use this Social Services Board exception of a way to reformulate the program, is to make it easier to administer, better timeline for it all, and extend it to more
Awareness,
people.
simple awareness
Yeah.
of it. One of the reasons why I'm bringing the topic up is this is a great time to have it, because you kind of want to have that, whatever you're going to do, in place long before your budget discussions start, which kind of seems to be creeping year over year closer to the
Yeah.
middle of the summer, right?
Well, and this gets to one of my standard complaints about the way we've done things over the last couple of years, is that we get people who bring us great ideas in March.
Yeah.
I don't want an idea in March where I've got to put together a program in 2 weeks to be able to pass the budget.
Yeah.
Bring me that idea in August.
Yeah.
So we can build it into the budget so that we've got the program figured out. We have an idea what it's going to cost. We have an idea of who we would need to hire. But get these ideas out there in August, September, October, not February and March.
So, Juan Diego, one of the reasons I want to have this conversation is for that very, very reason. From a rezoning perspective, which is some of the consulting work that I do, I tell clients exactly what you just said. If you want to submit something, don't do it in January 1, don't do it in February, do it in the middle of the summer where you can get the attention. So we have a pretty short window between today and really trying to get some really decent programs like tax relief, and at some point I'm going to have to tout the land trust because I'm the chairperson.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do that.
It's a great
on
program.
that end of it.
Yeah.
On end of it. So thank you for sharing that. Any jumping in on that?
So, as far as
Trying to
the timing,
the timing.
yeah. So I think that we want to start getting the city council ducks back in a row, so that if someone submits a proposal or something on a certain day, that they have some certainty when they're going to get an answer. And in the past, they didn't have that certainty. It could go in and you didn't know when you would get it back. And that was one of the things that I heard constantly during the year that I was on kind of campaigning, is that City Hall was not responding to the residents and to business owners. And that is something that we have already seen that has been kind of changing. And so even if you have a development or a proposal or a request for a sidewalk, you should be able to submit it in January or February, if that's what you need to do, and not necessarily, and we should be able to process that as a local government, and you still should be able to operate.
Well, I use the term turning red tape into green tape on a regular basis, but in fairness, you're also not quite staffed up yet.
Yeah,
Right.
short staff, big time. They don't have a city manager. We got to talk about the city manager here. We got to talk police chief. We got some pressing things to talk about.
Yeah.
But before we get off this topic, how about the pilot program with UVA, payment in lieu of taxes? Is there any traction at all with that, or is that a
Well,
pipe dream?
First of all, there's no statutory authority for it. But here's the approach that I would rather take.
Okay.
That is that in the 1980s, we worked out an agreement between the city and the county and the university that said that the university would stop buying property and holding it in the name of the university because that took it off the tax rolls. I did it just this past weekend. I went through and I made a list. There are about 40 different parcels that the university has bought, and that they were putting it all in the name of the Real Estate Foundation, which is still a taxable entity. But there are about 40 that they have bought now, most of them transfers from the Real Estate Foundation to the university. That is costing the city roughly $700,000 a year in tax revenue, even if you're only basing it on the value of the property at the time it was transferred. So if they built the new hospital on this land that was transferred to a non-taxable entity, we're not looking at taxes based on the value of the hospital. We're looking at the taxes that were on the basis of the vacant land that was there in 1992 or whenever it was. And so that's about $700,000 a year in taxes that we're not getting.
And that's conservative.
That's the most conservative way to look at it possible. Even if you just sort of looked at, okay, what would that value be if you inflated it by the normal inflation that would be applicable? Okay, maybe now you're looking at $1.5 million that we're losing. There is another $30 to $40 million worth of land that is presently owned by the Real Estate Foundation that we could reasonably expect over the next decade or so is also going to get converted if the present pattern continues. That's a real problem for us. And number one, it's a problem because it's going against the agreement that the university made with us back in the 1980s. Number two, completely aside from that, that's revenue that we're being denied that, let's face it, the university continues to be something of a burden to us in terms of police presence and fire and all these other things, some of which they contribute to, but they don't contribute the full amount. And so it continues to be a cost to us, and we're not getting that money. And I think we will need to readdress that with the university, even if it's only in looking at, hey, you made an agreement with us 35 years ago, and you're not following it. And you haven't been following it really. I mean, for about 5 years they followed it, it seems. And that's about it. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about it openly. If you want to think about that as payment in lieu of taxes, that's fine. That at least we've got a contractual authority for it, even if we don't have a statutory authority for it.
You're getting amens on the feed here from Dan Pettit, from Kevin Yancey, from Grayson, from a lot of people. Dan Pettit says, thank you for speaking at our Easter service,
Oh, yeah, that was
Juan
awesome.
Diego Wade.
Yeah.
So that was very straightforward from you. I just respect a lot of what you
as
just
you
said.
know,
That was fantastic. Okay. That was you pretty much saying, UVA, you need to change and you need to pony up. That's literally what he just did there.
So Juan Diego, how do you get from what Lloyd just said to actually making that happen? How does that happen?
I think that is something that hadn't been happening for the last 5 or 10 years, and I just sitting down talking, seeing if we can come up to a solution, a compromise. But in my mind, I've been on school board for the last 16 years. This is the first year that I really recall that it's come to the forefront like this. Maybe it has in the past, but I've been focused on school issues. But I know it was mentioned maybe a month or so ago when the chamber had their kind of state of the
community.
At the code building.
Yes, it was brought up then, and it didn't seem like they were receptive of it. But
Well, they completely deflected it.
Right.
yeah,
Well, and I had this conversation about the 1985 or 86 agreement with some senior staff at UVA, and they said, "What agreement?"
Yeah.
They didn't, as though they didn't know about it. Maybe they didn't know about it because they're newer too, and we need to refresh their recollection. But one of the places that I think we may be able to find some common ground on it, rather than getting stuck on the payment in lieu of taxes, hey, there's no authority for, let's talk about something that we can agree on as a common interest. And that's the state of West Main Street.
Oh, there you go.
The university had said they would put $5 million towards the West Main Streetscape improvements. it's looking now, I mean, we basically had to say when we were getting concerned about about how we're going to pay for the schools, we had to say we're going to take the West Main Street scape improvements off the table. Maybe we have to figure out a way to get the university to to participate more fully in that process, because let's face it, that mile between JPA and downtown Charlottesville is probably the most important mile that we have in the city of Charlottesville.
For sure.
It connects the two major economic drivers of the city, the major social drivers of the city. It's part of the entrance to the university, and to come through the area that is poorly maintained, that is not well planned out, ought to be something of profound interest to the university, as well as, frankly, to the city. And I'm hoping that if we can get through current financial difficulties, that we may find a way to revisit that streetscape improvement with more participation from the university.
Right, excuse me, Lord, and I just want to add on to that, and that mile has become even more important. When I was a student in the late 80s, it almost seemed like it was a different world from the university and the downtown mall. Now, if you look on practically any evening, but particularly on the weekends, is that you just see the flow of visitors, students, just going back and forth, because it's a lot that's going on in between there, but it's places where the sidewalk is not very good, the lighting is not very good. It's a lot that we can do to enhance that, to make it even more pleasurable for everyone, and that's something that would benefit the university, because I'm sure that when they're bringing in, prospective students and clients and professors, faculty, that they're like, this is what this community has to offer, and it just would be, it'll be a win-win situation for the entire community if we can improve that. But we had to make some difficult choices, and for me, the choice between education and that, it was easy for me, but not saying that wasn't important.
So most folks,
and I just said, what we need to do, the concern about simply the discussion of payment in lieu of taxes is that that discussion alone is a win-lose discussion. It's not a win-win discussion.
Because you're saying UVA would never do it.
Right. And so,
especially since they would really pay a lot to Albemarle County, probably more so than the city of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And they know this is in perpetuity.
And so what I want to do, I want to figure out a win-win.
so most folks.
That's a good idea.
Very much so. Most folks do not know that there used to be light rail going up West Main, right? Way back in the 1800s.
100 years ago.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add a little context to it. I had a meeting yesterday afternoon at the Quirk, and then I had a meeting at the president's office. And I walked, and I just kept an eye on a car. And I actually beat the car.
I can believe it.
To there, just walking. And, at a certain age, you don't walk as fast as you used to, you used to walk. But, something desperately needs to be done there.
So I just want to clarify here. So very straightforward. You know how I like to keep things simple here and straightforward. You're basically saying this, that instead of the payment in lieu of taxes program, you go to UVA, you have them pony up to improve infrastructure around the city, and you leverage that approach by saying this benefits the university as an access point to grounds. As prospective students and or potential hirees come to Charlottesville, they will benefit from this. That's what you're saying.
That's the sort of approach I would like to see us take.
That is not a bad idea.
So we all know, we negotiate. I know you negotiate for a living. I negotiate for a living. So I'm going to take the opposite side of that. What's my motivation on UVA to do that?
Makes grounds look better.
I'm already got it. I already got 20 more students coming
let me
than
give you
ever.
an example. The university has bought through the Real Estate Foundation, or has under contract, the entire area between the city limits and Emmett Street on University Avenue on the north side, and they're buying up on the south side too. They're not actually planning on using it, but they want control of it.
Sure.
Because they want control of the access to the university. And so if we can say to them, we're not going to, you don't need to control all of West Main Street to be able to control what it looks like, But if you're a part of the partnership to make this work, you don't have to have the hassles of ownership. We'll take care of that piece of it, but let's make it work for everybody. And then you've got the access, the control of the access, or the control of the way people will drive in, the way that they will see what they're dealing with.
So I want to be clear. I'm in favor of what
Yeah.
you're saying, right? But I just wanted to, for the sake of a talk show, to
Yeah.
take the opposite side of it. And as you know, I chair the Regional Housing Partnership, and the reality of it is that UVA's at the table. As the chairperson, I just wrote an agenda item for the next meeting to talk about, because as we started the show, right? They're the heartbeat, right, Juan Diego? They're the one that is keeping this going. But we have to come together. We have to do our 40-some-odd year marriage, right? And how does 40 years of marriage last? How does 36 years of marriage? We actually have a conversation about the tough issues.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
and UVA can't be truly in favor of affordable housing and equality without contributing to the coffers of the jurisdictions. I mean, there are contradictions if they don't do that.
And I don't want the discussion to be the university has to do this.
Sure.
Yeah, so we have 3 rules on this show, right? No divisive politics, no pointing fingers. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
No pointing fingers.
But you can encourage.
Well, and,
That's exactly
and
right.
we can find ways that it suits everybody's common interests. And as I look at that stretch, I mean, if you look at, say, last year about this time, we were having angry moms calling in because their students who were living, fussing about the police, fussing about violence and gunshots and so on. The university continues to have a very active need to be involved in what happens in that space.
So I'm on the President Ryan's Affordable Housing Community Engagement team, and I'm encouraging them to communicate with your staff. They're trying, but for some reason they just don't know how to do it.
Well, I've had some very good conversations with President Ryan, with some of his staff. To be honest, the calculation that I mentioned about the $6 million, 600,000, whatever it's been in lost tax revenues, I only did that this past weekend. Okay, I was here till 4 in the morning. I guess it was probably Saturday night, working up my spreadsheet, and I think I now understand what I've done. So I'm not going to say, hey, I've presented it to UVA and they've shot me down.
Sure.
It's the first step in making sure that we understand from the city's perspective what we're talking about. Now I want to sit down and talk with the folks at the university to say, let's talk about how we're going to make all this stuff work. We have to have the same sort of discussion with Albemarle County.
So why I love Juan Diego's walk and talk thing that you do. That's literally what has to happen. You have to grab Mr. Ryan, President Ryan's hand, and let's just walk down the street and have that conversation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, I'm on the President's Council as well, and we're having those conversations. We're trying to figure out the best way to approach this. And that, the pilot issue has just come up there. We have committees addressing affordable houses, kind of job readiness and medical. And they're trying to address that. I'm not a spokesperson for UVA, but I think that it's a good time to have these conversations with UVA. 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not so sure, but now I think that they may be more receptive to it.
There are a couple of reasons for that. One is that Jim Ryan came to UVA as president after having lived in this community for a decade or more. Second, he came at a time when the rector of the Board of Visitors, Jim Murray, is a Charlottesville, Albemarle County resident of long standing. There are other members of the board who have long ties to the Charlottesville community and not merely to UVA as seeing itself as separate from the community. So we have I think we need to take advantage of some of those favorable tailwinds, make some deals.
Well, and third, the market is more expensive than it's ever been.
Yeah.
My chemistry is working. I was literally going to quote that. This needs to get done sooner than later. There's 35 homes available as we stand right now in the city of Charlottesville. The median, anyone want to take a stab at what the median sales price is? You
I haven't
got
looked at it.
No.
$485,000.
Yeah.
Housing affordability, not affordable housing, but housing affordability needs to be on the top, needs to have this conversation on this end of it. That's an insane, in my opinion, number. Versus 11 years, it was $250,000.
Well, and the universities generally have long understood that part of what they need to do to attract the faculty they want to attract is to make sure that housing is affordable.
For sure.
I use the example of Stanford University, for example, that for a long time the prices, housing prices on the peninsula there have been exorbitant, and Stanford would go ahead and they would buy the properties and then loan the money to the faculty person to be able to buy it. If you go back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, UVA used to guarantee loans for faculty. And then that was before Fannie Mae got really going and before all of the financial infrastructure that we now think of as typical. But UVA knew that it had to do things like that even back then.
The reason I'm using Juan Diego, the term housing affordability, I have nurses, I have doctors that are coming in past residency that can't afford to live in Charlottesville. And frankly, the conversation was, oh my God, if I would have really known that. Now, somebody could just look on Realtor.com and figure that out pretty quickly.
That's not difficult.
But that conversation is being had. So hopefully, this conversation that you're having with the university will materialize into something. Hopefully.
Why don't we do this as we're closing the show here? A couple of other topics I want to throw to you guys. City manager hire was very important for you at the start of this year.
Right.
Where do we stand with that? I think Michael Rogers has done a heck of a job. Robert Bob Group looks like they're going to have their contract extended because it's about to run out here. I've brought up on this program before, if the city manager does not get hired soon, it's going to become a talking point of 2023 elections with 3 spots turning over potentially. The last thing, you're a sports guy, the last thing we want to do is have the quote-unquote lame duck city manager that's hired right before 3 new bodies come onto the dais potentially. I'm also going to ask you if you're going to run for re-election again on this program here. So first, the city manager.
Well, okay, as far as city manager goes, the one thing I'll say, I think that bringing in Michael Rogers was just an outstanding choice. He brings both stability and experience, but also the ability to help the boat keep moving in the right direction. I mean, people who know about boating will tell you that a boat that is not moving at all is not actually stable, but that a boat that is moving is more stable. And I think that's what we're seeing. So I think that's been an excellent choice. Our original contract with him, with the Robert Bob Group, called for 6 months. He's been on the job about 2.5 months. He actually came the beginning of February. So we've got some more time on that contract. But one of the questions that we've got to discuss, and we've talked a little bit about it on council, and I think we'll be talking about it more, is what do we need first? Do we need a police chief first, or do we need a city manager first?
But doesn't the city manager hire the police chief?
Yeah, and one of the questions is if we're already feeling like we're pretty comfortable with where we are at the moment with the city manager, are we feeling there's a greater need to make some motion, have some motion on the police chief? I don't know. That's a discussion we need to have.
Yeah, and I just want to add that Mr. Rogers has also been a great mentor to our 2 assistant city managers because of his vast experience over many years. And that's something that, I've been saying that, because we have been asked about this for the first 3 or 4 months I've been on the council. And I was like, let us get over the budget. So it's been, 2 or 3 weeks since we approved the budget. And so I think now we're starting to kind of focus on what's next, because June or July will be here before we know it. And we need to make a decision. I'm certainly happy and comfortable with Mr. Rogers and extending that, but I talked with Lloyd about this. I would like to, if we're going to do it, to extend it past the budget process so that we're not bringing someone else on.
Past the budget process of next year?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
you'll,
I mean, so we're not like if we, we hire someone December 31st or January 1st, that they're going to start right at the budget process as well.
So
And
Robert Bob Group would go into May of 2023 then?
So this is, I haven't talked with anyone else about this. This is kind of my gut feeling that, that not unless we get someone else like Mr. Rogers, who has done many budgets before, of bigger budgets, and Charlottesville, even though for us, $250 million is a lot, but for him, he's done much larger budgets, and it's not as a big deal. So that's what I would like. I don't want, because I know what I had to go through just kind of coming on in January with a budget. And Charlottesville is small, but man, the politics here is, I call it big city on politics. So you have to understand.
there's a lot of engagement,
Yes.
a lot of engagement, which is a good thing.
And one thing to keep in mind, we've had, each of our last 5 budgets was prepared by a different city manager.
Yeah.
We have never had the same city manager 2 years in a row at budget time. And so that's a factor. If we're looking for stability, that's a factor.
So are you're also in favor of what Vice Mayor Waite said about Robert Bob Group, May 2023?
We haven't had that discussion. I mean, Juan and I talked about it on the phone this past weekend, or earlier this week, I should say. But I'm not saying I'm all in favor of May 2023. I am thinking about whether there are more things going on that require immediate action with the police department than with the rest of the city government. And I say this partly because I like Michael Rogers and the job he's been doing. I also want to give a shout out specifically to Sam Sanders and Ashley Marshall, the deputy city managers, both of whom I think are excellent. And I will tell you that one of the people who are, Robert Bob said to us, I want you to understand that you've got 2 budding superstars as your deputy city managers. And,
Agreed.
And that they are, and I also, while we're giving shout outs, I want to shout out to Chip Boyles,
Oh, yeah.
who hired them.
Love Chip Boyles.
Oh, yeah.
And so
But they both turned down the interim city manager position.
they both said they didn't, right, and for a lot of reasons, but.
And sometimes you need a COO, right? You need that's the role that I'll tell you.
But I bring that up because if they turned it down, maybe they are not the heir apparent for city manager.
Well, they turned it down when it was offered.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a different
The
world today.
time is important.
Okay.
And-
When it was
and-
being discussed in December.
And
Okay.
each day, they're learning so much more working under Mr. Rogers, and as we're moving forward, starting to address these issues that have been on the back burner before. Now they can address them in a much more orderly manner, in my opinion.
So I can speak to this from my personal opinion. I'm not a city resident, so first to get that out there, but I do work in the city. My offices are in the city. This approach that you guys were taking about hiring a consultant is not unlike what a corporation would do or a business would do, right? Hey, we need to bring somebody in who's an expert on that and go ahead and do that. And I think that he has not fully righted the ship yet, right? It's turning up a little bit. Personally, I would like to see if this gentleman and the corporation and the consulting contract you have is working, right? It appears to be. I think you need to give him a little bit more time. I agree 100% with you, Juan Diego, that if you're going to make that switch, don't do it in the middle of budget season.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we can't begin the advertising process.
That's a whole
during
different,
the budget
the
season.
search process is a
But-
multi-month process. That's a whole different
And
animal.
it's something that I mentioned to Lloyd, is that if we do it, then maybe if Mr. Rogers is still here, that they can not tag team, but that he can show them show
Yeah, so
show
you'd
him her
have,
the ropes.
you would have, like any other corporate scenario, right? You would have that consultant. I just hired Juan Diego as a new CEO. Lloyd is my consultant, going to pay you an extra couple of months to help you
Yeah.
snap in.
Yeah.
And it makes clear, logical sense on how to move forward.
But here's the other piece we can't lose sight of. Michael Rogers has some say in the matter, too.
Without a doubt.
And-
Well, technically, you hired a company.
I understand.
Right, and the company.
But I'm not interested in whoever Robert Bob might throw us
Sure.
if Michael Rogers
Yeah.
says, I've been here long enough.
Yeah.
The fact is, I think what I've
Does
talked
he
to-
live here?
I think he's got an
Apartment or something?
here,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
his home is still in the DC area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the church he goes back to on the weekends was I think what he would call his home community is up there.
That's just a matter of a little negotiations. I'm pretty comfortable that you guys can do that successfully.
But I think there are two things that I think he said to me. One is that he's enjoying what he's doing, that he is very pleased with the way that the council has been working. I think he may have had some trepidation after watching some of the council meetings at the end of last year, but he's pleased with the way things are going. And he is enjoying the mentorship relationship with Ashley and with Sam and working with them.
Lloyd,
We got to wrap up.
Oh,
Here.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
we got to wrap up.
Sorry
We
about
got
that.
reading some body language here. Did you say if you're going to run for re-election?
I didn't say.
Lloyd, I was trying to help you out by changing
Did you
the
say
subject.
that? That you're going to do that?
I probably will.
Yeah.
Oh, look.
Didn't you say at one of the, didn't Ginny Bixby quote you in an article in the Daily Progress, if I run for re-election, I'm going to be held to what I say today? I mean, did you tip it off then? Because I thought that was a tip-off. So you're saying you probably will.
Well, yeah, I expect to, but things could change. I don't know.
Okay, there we go. You guys are great.
Yeah.
This was fantastic.
Thank you for this opportunity to come, let us talk about, kind of a different perspective on the state of Charlottesville. It's a great opportunity.
Gentlemen, when we get to the time that we are, and not realizing until I just looked at the watch, at the clock, what time it was, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to invite you back on a regular basis to
Thank you.
Love
snap
to
us
do
up.
it.
Thank you.
You guys were
Now I
fantastic.
got to go jump on a 12 o'clock.
I know. Judah Wickhauer is our director, Keith Smith, Vice Mayor Juan Diego Wade, Mayor Lloyd Snook. I'm Jerry Miller. Thank you kindly for joining us. The I Love Seville show is up in 45 minutes, guys. Take care.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
Have a good one, guys.
Always a pleasure, folks.
Great job.
I was not watching the button.